The House will come to order. Today, the national anthem will be sung by Young Voices of Colorado, guests of Representative Garcia, House District 35.
Thank you.
you. That was beautiful. Today, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Kira Cato from Capstone Academy, Adams County, also guest of Representative Garcia.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Bacon, Barone, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brooks, Brown, Caldwell, Camacho, Carter, Clifford, DeGraff, Duran. Representative English is excused. Espinoza, Foray, Flanell, Froelich, Garcia, Garcia-Sander, Gilchrist, Goldstein, Representative Goldstein is excused. Gonzalez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay, Luck, Lukens, Mabry, Marshall, Martinez, Morrow, McCormick, Wynn, Pascal, Phillips, just right there, Richardson, yeah. Ricks, Representative Ricks,
Excused.
Rutenell, Ryden, just in the middle there, Sirota, Slaw, Smith, Soper, Representative Soper is excused. Stewart K, Stewart R, Story, Sukla, Taggart, Titone, Valdez A, Velasco, Representative Velasco is excused. Weinberg, Wilford, Winter, okay. Woodrow, Woog, Zokai, and Madam Speaker.
Here. With 61 present for excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Flanell.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Friday, February 20, I'm reading the wrong one. Let me start all over again. Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Monday, February 23rd, 2026 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, can I have your attention, please? Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. No! The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Members, before we begin our business of the day, we are going to do announcements and introductions. Hurry, sign up, or it's a $1 fine. $1 fine. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government will meet 10 minutes upon adjournment, or upon adjournment, as the transcription says. And we will be hearing a couple bills that are 1079, 1145, 1187, and 1098.
Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Human Services Committee will meet today upon adjournment and hear bills 1109, 1063, 1069, 1122, and the Sunset Review of the Medical Practice Act. We'll start with 1109 because we have some sign language interpreters and we want to make sure that they're able to participate. Thanks so much. We'll see you there.
Thank you. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary Committee members, we will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment in room 107. We're going to hear House Bills 1039, House Bill 1108, House Bill 1131, House Bill 1101, and House Bill 1047. 10 minutes upon adjournment, room 107.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to remind you all to check your emails. The Colorado Agricultural Forum is this Thursday, and legislators and your staff are invited to attend. Come meet farmers and ranchers around the state. Come meet with urban folks who are trying to bridge that divide along with their urban colleagues across the state. This is a fantastic time to come together to talk about agriculture, water, our environment. This is hosted by the Colorado Ag Leadership Program, which I'm a proud alum. And this is building our future to work on those communication efforts to bridge the divide. If you have questions, it's this Thursday. Happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rep. Representative Stewart, R.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, you have an egg shaker on your desk because it's Music Therapy Day at the Capitol. So
Yay.
Please go talk to them. They would love to chat with you about music therapy.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, members. I have two announcements on behalf of Black History. If anyone cares, on Thursday, we will be feeding everybody with some good old-fashioned soul food, barbecue, Caribbean and West African food in our annual Black History Month food event. And then members, today, so look out for that. That will be on your desk. And as I learned from last time, I hope nobody got like a prepared meal caucus meeting or something, that y'all come get some soul food. I'm sorry, thank you. Okay, for
members, your attention at the well, please.
Mark your calendars, fam. Okay, today's hidden figure is the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion. This battalion was the only all-black, all-female battalion that served overseas in World War II. It was formed in 1944, where their mission was to clear a massive backlog of mail for American soldiers in Europe, ensuring letters and packages reached troops quickly. Despite facing the challenges of war and segregation, the battalion completed 6 months of work in just 3 months, maintaining an impressive record of accuracy and efficiency. The 688 broke both racial and gender barriers in the U.S. Army, boosting morale for soldiers overseas, improving the professionalism and capability of Black women in critical roles. I might just be reading this for myself. Thank you. Their legacy continues to inspire women and people of color pursuing careers in the armed forces and beyond. Thank you so much, you all.
Thank you, AML Bacon. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hey, guess what? All of you all that need a puppy, tomorrow is your day. There will be puppies at the Capitol. I think this is kind of funny, this flyer on your desk. The legislative session can be a little rough. Sometimes you need a little positive reinforcement. So tomorrow there will be adoptable puppies here at the Capitol. So I expect people I'm looking at to probably adopt a puppy and then carry it around all day. So tomorrow from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you get to hold, pet, and love on a puppy. Representative Lindsay.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. If I could call down the Capitol Choir, we have a birthday to celebrate quickly before we get going with business today.
Capitol Choir, please come down.
Capitol Choir.
Capitol Choir.
It is Rep. Story's birthday. Capitol Choir, come down to the well. It is time to sing to our lovely colleague.
Members, come on down, come on down.
Representative Story. She's over here. Representative Story, would you stand here for us so we can sing to you? Manny, I'm going to have you kick us off.
No, I can't. I'm the one who
Okay. Everybody, let's go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Rep. Story. Happy birthday to you.
We didn't do it. We were close.
Happy birthday, Rep. Representatives Barone and Garcia, one moment, please. Members, if I can have your attention, please. Representative Barone.
Members, I'm up here with one of my good friends, Lorena Garcia. I know, exactly. Okay, now we got everybody's attention. Thank you. Members, I rise today to ask you to join me to recognize the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, SCFD. As you can see, there's some stuff on your desk right there. And I have a recognition right here. So the Colorado House convened in the second regular session of the 75th General Assembly, hereby extends heartiest congratulations and commendation to the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District. The members of the Colorado House commend the SCFD for nearly 40 years of connecting the public to arts, culture, and scientific experiences. Its steadfast commitment to ensure unparalleled levels of access to Colorado residents, offering thousands of free and discontinued activities each year and 4 million educational experiences for youth and adults alike, is a model of civic leadership and community impact. The 304 diverse cultural organizations funded by the voter-created SCFD contributed...
Representative, excuse me. Members, thank you. If you could keep your voices down, Representative Barone, please proceed.
You want me to be louder? Contributed... No, I won't turn into bacon, I promise. Contributed 3.12 billion in total economic activity in the Denver metropolitan area and provided more than 14,000 jobs in 2024. Woo! Equally important, these organizations provided 14.5 million movements of pure wonder for the district residents through free days, exhibitions, performances, classes, and more, focused on culture for all. The SCFD continues to be a shining example of how the things that unite us are for greater than those that divide us. On request of Representatives Carlos Barron and Lorena Garcia, given this 24th day of February 2026, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado.
Representative Garcia.
Representative Barron, I would expect that you know how to say my first name better than that, homie. Ooh. He's my good friend. Thank you, Rep. Barron. It is a pleasure to rise with you today to pay tribute to the contributions of the SCFD. Jefferson County is home to 50 of the SCFD-funded partners, including Butterfly Pavilion, Central City Opera, and Colorado Environmental Film Festival. In addition to enriching our lives, the district has made an indelible contribution to our region's education and economy. With more than 4 million educational experiences available through SCFD's funded partners, kids and adults alike gain hands-on exposure to arts, culture, and science that they may not otherwise be able to access. And in 2024, SCFD and its funded partners generated, ready? They generated $3.12 billion in total economic activity, more than 14,000 jobs, and more than $690 million in cultural tourism. It's clear that our thriving cultural sector is crucial to the health of our state. I want to thank the young voices of Colorado for their performance of the national anthem. It was absolutely incredible and beautiful, and the fact that they were able to put together such an incredible performance is very much thanks to SCFD. I also want to share that today marks SCFD Day in Colorado as proclaimed by Governor Polis, and I hope you'll join us in celebrating with SCFD and its funded partners, including the Butterfly Pavilion, Cherry Arts, Colorado Fine Arts Association, Downtown Aurora Visual Arts Association, Hot Quest, the Ocean First Institute, and the first floor of the Capitol in the West Foyer. And with that, yours is so much better. Okay, to celebrate the sciences and culture, we decided to honor each other as each other are speaking with our own interpretations of each other artistically.
Fanny pack. Fanny pack. You can't forget the fanny pack. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader, I don't think props were allowed. I think that's probably a fine, right? I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Madam Speaker, I'll pay that fine.
All right, members. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of resolution.
Members, we are proceeding to business. Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolution. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 12.
Senate Joint Resolution 12 by Senators Pelton R. and Hendrickson, also Representatives Johnson and Winter, concerning the designation of February 20th, 2026 as Colorado FFA Day.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We were able to do this resolution in the Senate on FFA Day, which was February 20th. This week is FFA week, so please reach out to your FFA chapters in your district. Encourage them, because they are our future, and we urge a yes vote.
Assistant, I do need for one of you to move the resolution. Yes, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The technicalities. I move Senate Joint Resolution 26012 and do not request that it be read at length.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Assistant Minority Leader Winter.
We urge you all a yes vote, please.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 12. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Garcia. Please close the machine. With 64 aye, 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 12 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the following bills be made special orders on February 24th, 2026 at 9:29 a.m. House Bill 1017, House Bill 1114, House Bill 1099, House Bill 1103, House Bill 1146, and House Bill 1180.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders today, February 24th at 9:29 a.m. Representative Camacho. Members, you've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Camacho will take the chair.
Colleagues, the committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of Majority Leader. The coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 26-1017.
House Bill 1017 by Representatives Espinoza and Zokai, also Senator Weissman, concerning prohibiting an insurer from receiving restitution through the criminal restitution process.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1017.
That is proper motion to the bill.
Oh, you go first.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get into the bill, we do have an amendment. So I move L005 to House Bill 1017 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion, and Amendment L005 has been properly displayed. I will note for the House that this was received on February 19th, 2026 at 8:54 a.m. To the amendment. Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm rising today. Last week, we've handed out a multiple-page amendment. It's a strike below to this bill. But let me just say, colleagues, this amendment does exactly what the one-page bill that we originally introduced into committee is doing. However, at committee, it was important to have a conversation about the bill, and one of the items that emerged was a question of whether our intent could be circumvented by the way the bill was written. Specifically, in this bill, what we are doing is removing insurance companies from the criminal restitution opportunity. That is because insurance companies already have the opportunity to obtain premiums, and they may obtain a civil judgment, and we wanted to remove the third issue in terms of restitution with additional principal and interest that adds to a third bite of the apple in terms of insurance companies. This bill was drafted to provide victim prioritization in the criminal restitution process. By not requiring the courts to also pay insurance companies, which have these other avenues of remedy, we are allowing the victims to have precedence in the criminal restitution process. So what we did initially was just strike insurance companies from one section in the law. Subsequent to the committee determining that there might be an issue of a loophole where insurance companies could come in the back door by virtue of our original draft, we went back to the full statute, and in our research, we discovered there was a decision called People versus Lockett that had been recently, since I originally worked on the drafting of the bill, been written by the Court of Appeals in Colorado. That case led us to the understanding that there was also a question of restitution in the auto insurance area, which had not been addressed by original bill, which was simply in the definition of criminal restitution. That is why you have before you today a 4-page strike below, and that strike below does exactly the same thing. It just simply says that we're actually providing a legislative declaration because the court was confused as to what the intent of the legislature was, so we've added that to the part of the bill. And then it indicates that we are not allowing insurance companies to obtain restitution in criminal cases unless they are in fact a direct victim. So if somebody throws a rock through the Allstate window, you're still going to be able to seek restitution in that case because you were a victim. We're not denying that under this bill. Moreover, we rewrote the words to deal with workers' compensation circumstances where a company is not a direct victim per se, but might be a victim that would be able to be receiving benefits. So the strike below also addresses that by reinserting language into the definition of what restitution is to make clear that we are committed to solely removing them from them being insurance companies from restitution in the criminal case. We have stakeholdered this bill extensively. The insurance companies do not have any objection. They are grateful that we in fact worked with them to ensure that we were clear that they would not be harmed on their civil process or if they were a direct victim. So therefore we are asking for an affirmative vote on this strike below amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L005 passes. To the bill, Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my co-prime did an excellent job. It's been wonderful working with her on this bill, and I will just give a bit of background as to how I've approached this policy. The purpose of restitution
Representative Zokai, apologies, 1 second.
Not a problem.
Colleagues, if we can please keep the volume in the chamber down. If you need to discuss, please move to the side. Representative Zokai, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of restitution is to help people who were harmed by a crime. It is to allow a victim to be able to recoup the cost of medical bills or to replace stolen property or to regain a sense of stability after harm has occurred. In my mind, a victim is a human person. And so for the person who's convicted, especially when that person is lower income, restitution becomes an unpayable debt many times, and it follows them long after a sentence is complete. Especially as there is interest on restitution, the balance many times grows faster than somebody can repay, and it traps families in cycles of poverty and makes successful re-entry harder, at many times hanging over someone's head their entire life. So that harm to the convicted may be defensible when it's going to help a harmed person recover. But when we are putting someone through that cycle of debt to repay an insurance company, we are essentially choosing to deepen poverty without a rehabilitative or restorative purpose. In fact, I would say that when restitution is ordered against an insurance company, it is solely serving a punitive purpose. And because insurance companies are, in this bill, when we're talking about they're not direct victims of crime, they are sophisticated financial institutions, and they are doing quite well for themselves. And so I don't believe we should impose a lifelong debt on a low-income person to reimburse a corporation that has priced loss into their business model. Insurance companies are structurally designed to absorb and distribute risk. Losses are anticipated, priced, and pooled among policyholders through premiums, reserves, and reinsurance. And I do want to note that other states have passed laws prohibiting insurance companies from acting as victims in criminal restitution, and that includes California, Hawaii, Kentucky, North Carolina, Nevada, and Louisiana. And we urge an aye vote.
Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate that I approach this bill from the perspective of making victims whole as a priority, and that's what we're addressing in this bill. I concur that it's important that in light of the construct that my co-prime has just articulated, we want to make sure that we are prioritizing victims in this circumstance and making sure that they are whole in a criminal circumstance. So I urge an aye vote on this bill.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is interesting in this, in that in the definition of persons, a business entity does have the protections of being a person, or and enjoying the same rights. And so there is what an insurance company is yes, it is a sophisticated. It's a sophisticated mechanism to distribute risk, but now what this law does, it seems to me, is it's going to require these insurance companies to integrate a higher degree of risk loss, right? That they have to integrate this price loss, and so where is this price loss recouped? Well, the sponsor said they can recoup it in the civil court, right? They can recoup it in the civil court, or they can recoup it in premiums. Now, either way, the taxpayer loses. The tax widgets of Colorado lose. Because if you have to relitigate this in civil court, this is going to require that court time is taken up, and we've already taken up this time. Now, if you want to prioritize the immediately harmed victims of a crime, then fine. Put them at the head of the line. I don't know what the order it is. I would hope that would be the order, and that the corporate interest or the collective interest of the insurance payer, which is, let's not call it the insurance payer, let's call it the collective community that has been harmed by an individual tapping into this. And we've seen this mentality with a lot of the rioting. A lot of the rioting had to do with and saying, hey, go ahead and break into these stores, go ahead and do all that because these stores have insurance, and the costs will be absorbed by the insurers. We see that in the structure of anything that is stolen below like $1,000 or something, where it's just assumed that the insurance will go there, and that the insurance will just integrate that price loss into their premiums. Well, who pays the premiums? Again, it is the collective body that is buying that insurance. Now the insurance company is going to have to raise their rates. So either the civilians, either the tax widgets of Colorado are going to have to pay more taxes in order to have more civil proceedings, or most likely it's going to go along the lines because the likely damages are going to be below the court costs that would be incurred by the insurance company, or just going against the overall prevailing ideology that insurance companies can just absorb this cost and just opt out of that. So you either have the tax widgets of Colorado having to pay extra, having to wait in longer lines for justice because the courts are clogged with these, or you just put these premiums on the back of Coloradans. And where do you have insurance risk? Well, you have insurance risk in your homeowner's risk, your homeowner's property, or your homeowner's policy. You have a risk in your car insurance property. You have risk incurred in like businesses with their insurance for their businesses. You know, it's probably a prime reason that a lot of these businesses have left downtown, because at some point they can no longer afford the insurance. Now, at some level, I don't think that this is unintentional, because there's the ideology of trying to push the state towards being the the provider of such insurance. But that might get into intent. But this is ultimately pushing the crime, the cost of the crime, onto the tax widgets of Colorado. This is a tax. This is an increase in tax. It's a cost imposed by government on the citizens of Colorado. It's one more. It's a good intention that they are going to, but they could just get themselves in line. Are they ever going to get the restitution from that individual? Likely not. But at least they would be in line. It would not require that additional litigation, clogging up our courts. So ultimately what this bill is doing is it's just saying, hey, we're not going to pay the insurers. We're not going to give them money. We're not going to hold accountable criminals to their collective responsibilities to their society that they harmed totally. We're just going to give them a pass. So this is once again just giving the individuals a pass, putting it on the backs of tax widgets of Colorado. It's another tax, it's another fee, it's another burden on the business, the price of living in Colorado. Don't make any mistake about what this is. This is about raising the cost of living in Colorado and making sure that crime does not have to pay, and that it is excused and it is coddled. It is therefore encouraged. We will therefore get more of it. We'll get more of it, and our insurance rates will go up even higher. So reject the road to hell that is paved with good intentions like this.
Would the sponsors like the last word? Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say my colleague misunderstood this bill. It's a straightforward bill. And in terms of the cost savings, let me say one additional factor in this bill is it will actually save the judiciary costs because they will no longer have to monitor and keep track of the insurance companies in terms of that restitution. That is no simple that's not a simple savings, that's a significant savings because tracking and sending checks out in minuscule amounts to the insurance company, which is all diverted away from the victims, is a savings that will inure to the state. This is not a harm to taxpayers or a harm to victims. This is a sensible bill to prioritize victims and ensure that we still allow an insurance company, which is a recognized entity, to receive restitution if they are a direct victim, and they have many other avenues to seek relief in other ways. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1017? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1017 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1017 as amended passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1114.
House Bill 1114 by Representatives Stewart R. and Woodrow, also Senator Ball, concerning an allowed minimum lot size for subject jurisdictions.
Representative Woodrow.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1114 and the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee report.
That's a proper motion to the committee report. Representative R. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L002 to the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion, and L002 has been properly displayed to the amendment. Representative R. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L002 amends the committee report to clarify that minimum lot frontage, setbacks, open space, or maximum lot coverage dimensions that have the practical effect of preventing the construction of a single-family home on a lot that has an area of 2,000 square feet and that's residential use is limited to a single-family home is prohibited. And I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, sponsors, for bringing this. Good ideas do come from everywhere. But I want to talk a little bit about the bill, and then I do have...
Just a point of clarification, we are on the amendment.
Correct, but I'd like to
If you can talk to the amendment, that'd be great. Okay, thanks.
All right, so the bill and what's in this committee report do represent something we've watched in this chamber a lot. It's a trend towards a steady expansion of state mandates that into what have been historically local land use decisions. Before joining the legislature, I served 8 years as a county commissioner, dealing directly with some of the most complex and land use questions our community faced. Even before those 2 terms, I also served on our planning commission. I've sat through hearings, weighed competing interests, listened to neighbors with legitimate concerns, and worked through the difficult balancing act between growth, property rights, economic development, and community character. These are rarely simple decisions, and they almost are always better handled closest to the people affected. Cities and counties across Colorado are already actively working to address the affordability issues that we have. But they need to do this, and they do this locally in a way that fits their own citizens' needs, geography, infrastructure, and economic realities. Land use decisions aren't static. They evolve continuously through a well-established local public process that's designed specifically to ensure community input and thoughtful outcomes. Typically, a need for change can be identified by anyone. A planning commissioner may see a gap in policy. Staff may identify regulatory conflicts. Members of the public frequently bring forward ideas based on what they're experiencing in their own neighborhoods. And yes, even the legislature brings forward ideas that should be considered. But when that happens, there's a process in place. That process for change begins at the Planning Commission, both in municipalities and in counties. Proposed updates are publicly noticed and hearings are held. Citizens provide input. Experts testify. Staff provides analysis. The commission or the council or the planning commissioner at this point debates and the issue openly and ultimately makes a recommendation, whether it's a recommendation to adopt a change, modify it, or take no action at all. And then that recommendation moves forward to either the council or the county commissioners. Another publicly noticed public hearing takes place. Public comment is again taken. Impacts are evaluated. Sometimes proposals are approved, sometimes they're rejected. Sometimes they're sent back for additional work. It's an iterative process designed to get land use policy right for the people that it affects most directly. And I want to emphasize something that those of us who have served in these roles learned very quickly. You are taught, it's pounded into your head by council attorneys, by county attorneys, by professional organizations that you do not make predetermined decisions in land use or in any public hearing setting. Predetermination leads to lawsuits. It leads to court challenges. It often leads to decisions being overturned. If you believe the decision's already made, if you believe there's a bias, as a decider, as a council member, as a commissioner, you really ought to be recusing yourself. That's the ethical response to not being able to make a fair and unbiased decision. And that's why this bill and the changes to the committee report concern me. When the legislature mandates the outcome rather than allowing the process to work itself out, it risks turning local public hearings into little more than a procedural exercise with a foregone conclusion. That does not strengthen public confidence, and it doesn't lead to the best decisions for that locality. Frankly, it makes a mockery of the public hearing process that's designed to ensure fairness, transparency, and thoughtful decision-making. We pass hundreds of bills every year in this body, and many of them are to correct the unintended consequences from legislation that was passed in previous years. That reality alone should caution us against assuming that we fully understand the complex dynamics that play out in every community across the state. So that's why I'm seeking an amendment today. I move L005 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed. And behind me is somebody asking for copies. Here you go.
That is a proper motion, and Amendment L005 has been properly
Oh.
displayed.
I am hearing this should probably be a substitute. Yes.
Oh, a
So
substitute.
My motion would be that this amendment be a substitute amendment to the previously offered amendment. Thank you to the sponsors.
Okay, that is a proper substitute motion for
So-
L005.
First of all, Buddy, you're
To the
welcome.
amendment, Representative Richardson.
You are welcome. This is a much simpler amendment. Just a couple of words changed, but it does, and I admit, make a dramatic change to the bill. Rather than requiring the adoption of new land code, it requires the consideration of the adoption. It requires that before 2031, that local bodies consider this good idea potentially for each community and bring it before public hearing in a way that an unbiased decision can be made with all the facts in mind for that locality, not directing just make a change, hold a hearing with a predetermined outcome and make that change. Local communities can still and should still, because they do, evaluate an idea that comes before public hearing seriously. I'm concerned that if we let this bill go through the way it is written, this just becomes another step towards statewide preemption of local land use authority. What were once decisions made in a highly collaborative manner with the citizens of a locality just becomes ministerial with outcomes predetermined. That's not the direction we should be heading. The bill as written risks predetermining outcomes and turning local hearings into just a procedural theater with the outcome known. Somewhat like our amendment process, some might say. But this will continue on, if we continue on this path, we do risk public confidence and trust in our systems. There's plenty of local council seats available. There's plenty of county commissioner seats available every 4 years. If members of the body want to take control of that local body, those are the positions they should run for. I urge a yes vote on this amendment.
AML Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I also rise in support of this amendment. We had chatted about it with a bill just a while back. You know, these communities take a lot of time in their planning. They spend a whole lot of money trying to build their neighborhoods the way that they want. And my district is completely different when it comes to the housing. Don't get me wrong, we all need affordable housing. We're all trying to solve that crisis, but it changes the whole makeup of neighborhoods. It changes the whole makeup of what communities have done to plan their neighborhoods, how they want their neighborhoods to look, different parts of their communities. So, I mean, I think taking that power away from the local officials to have those meetings where people could come in and testify and voice their opinion on how they want their neighborhood to work, and then to have the state come in and you know, put words like shall and must in legislation just makes it tough when you have communities that have spent countless amount of hours, countless amounts of dollars trying to create neighborhoods that suit their area of the state better. So with all due respect, I urge a yes vote.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for not ignoring me. Members, is this not one of the greatest amendments you have ever seen in your life? It went from pretty much a whole page to 4 lines. But it makes a big difference. And I do agree with my fellow colleagues on this side of the aisle that this is very important to be able to keep local control, to be able to keep these municipalities in control of their own communities, which they know best what is best for their communities. There are plenty of communities in the state that are already doing this, already allowing for smaller, affordable housing units to be built into their community. To mandate the rest of them to do so it really doesn't, and not just that, it could possibly affect the communities already doing this by circumventing their planning commissions and circumventing their master plan. So this amendment, I believe, is very good, and I really do urge an aye vote on this. And if honestly, I think it's one of the greatest amendments I've ever seen in the almost 2 sessions that I've been in here. Thank you.
Representative R. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. We appreciate the very considered amendment. But unfortunately, this amendment would actually make the entire bill optional, so we are asking for a no vote.
Representative Richardson. As a sponsor of the amendment, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. I would respectfully disagree that this doesn't make the entire bill optional. It has a state requirement in it, and that is that jurisdictions that fit within the scope of this bill must consider adoption of this policy. It preserves our local hearing process. It preserves the voice of the people in the design and the future of their own communities, but it does allow state input. I did not bring an amendment that struck the enacting clause. This bill still has a purpose, even with this amendment, and that is to consider something that this body may think is a good idea locally and adopt it if it works locally. So I would still urge a yes vote.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. I support this amendment because I support the consent of the governed. It troubles me that the reason for going against this amendment is because that it would make the bill optional. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So your role here is your just powers here, the powers that are justly yours. Not merely yours, but justly yours. That justice that you say you want. Those are derived from the consent of the governed. So when the consent of the governed is considered, if this bill is a good idea, and you say, hey, thank you, legislation, thank you, General Assembly, for bringing it to our attention, and that is certainly something we could consider. But when you take this good intention, when you take the decision that this body is always making the decisions for the greater good, and one thing that we know from history is that for the greater good never is. And so when you make these decisions for the greater good, by circumventing, by usurping, by destroying, by stepping on, by crushing the consent of the governed, you are acting outside of your just powers. You are acting outside of the justice that you so often pretend to represent. So this is a good amendment just in the sense that it reinstills the idea of the consent of the governed. Now, I do realize that for the majority of the representatives in here, that the consent of the governed is anathema to your overall goals and ideology. But that is what you are here for.
Representative DeGraff, let's focus on the amendment, not the intent of our colleagues, and please couch your opinions to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Strike, not require, and say consider requiring. Consider requiring means we are going back to the consent of the governed. Striking required means violation of the consent of the governed. So the bill could just say violating the consent of the governed. The entire bill is intended to violate the consent of the governed. That is the bill. Then there's a lot of other words about what the bill is that it is violating for the greater good, which again, history has shown by millions of deaths, hundreds of millions of deaths, never is. The gallery, the people in the gallery, they're the ones who the just powers flows down from that consent. So this bill is about violating the just powers derived from the consent of the governed. This amendment reinstills that by saying, we think it's a good idea, and because it's a good idea, we won't reinforce it with a gun. Because if a good intention is a good idea, it won't need a gun. This bill, whether it's a good intention, a good idea, or just the road to hell, ultimately is enforced by guys with guns. That is coercion. This bill is ultimately coercion, and the sponsor just said this bill is about coercion. Not in so many words, but by saying that we cannot suggest, but we must demand acquiescence to the will of the General Assembly, that is a usurpation of the consent of the governed. That is a violation of your oath every single day. So I recommend an aye vote on this. I recommend that we kind of stop thinking in terms of the tax widgets being your subjects, where you have earned or been deemed the right to govern. What you have is you have the privilege of representing the citizens of Colorado. You don't have the right to govern. And yes, His Excellency has the right idea for this bill by donning the crown of demand. So yes, it truly is plastic, which is also appropriate for the level of demand. So I urge an aye vote on this. If it's a good idea, if this good intention is a good idea, it won't need a gun. Right now, the sponsors are saying, we need a gun behind it because we don't think it's that good of an idea that the citizens of Colorado will adopt it voluntarily. So therefore, because we know better than the citizens of Colorado, we will impose it on them. And if they don't comply, if they don't capitulate to the boot, we will send somebody with a gun.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. Amendment L005 fails. To Amendment L002. Is there any further discussion on Amendment L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L002 passes. To the committee reports. Any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the committee report as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee report passes. To the bill. Representative R. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L003 to House Bill 1114 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. L003 has been properly displayed. To the amendment. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment L003 is a clarification of historical districts that was requested, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L003. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L003 passes. To the bill. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify for everyone listening the narrowness of the applicability of this particular piece of legislation. We start off with a select number of subject jurisdictions who even begin to be subject to this piece of legislation. Secondly, the applicability of this bill is really only about lots and properties where one is only allowed to build a single-family home. So I know we're talking about things like comprehensive plans. The wonderful thing about this bill is that if there is a space in a jurisdiction where the jurisdiction has decided that they want single-family homes only, they get to keep that. We are just asking and hoping, based on all of the evidence that points to the fact that land in Colorado is one of the biggest contributing factors to housing unaffordability, that building single-family homes on smaller lots is actually going to increase the ability of Coloradans to enter home ownership for the first time and support the building of starter homes here in Colorado. So again, I just want to make sure that as we have this discussion, we are really speaking to the facts of the bill and the narrow applicability. If a subject property ends up being, the use by right ends up being expanded to something like additional forms of middle housing, then this bill no longer applies. So there are plenty of optional, I would say, paths for any of our local subject jurisdictions to take if they want to continue to support middle housing, even if it ends up not being reducing single-family home minimum lot sizes. And I would urge an aye vote.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, it's an honor to stand before you, joined with my esteemed co-prime sponsor, Rep. Stewart, to present HB 261114, minimum lot sizes. As we continue our work to make housing more affordable throughout the state, we confront certain policies that unfortunately artificially restrict supply. Though many local governments have undoubtedly done exemplary work to expand housing access and development, minimum lot sizes persist as an obstacle to the construction of much-needed starter homes. I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know. Land in Colorado is expensive, often forcing up home prices past the $1 million mark. In fact, statewide, residential land costs have increased by 6 times the rate of inflation over the last decade, and in Denver are now $1.2 million per acre. Minimum lot sizes require each home to consume a large amount of this costly land. This forces new homes to be expensive simply to recover land acquisition costs. For example, an undeveloped 6,300 square foot residential lot in Denver's North Park Hill neighborhood is currently listed at $350,000. A 2,500 square foot house built at $250 per square foot, that's a $625,000 building cost, would therefore approach $1 million in lot and build costs alone, meaning homes built there cannot realistically sell for less. Smaller lots can lower costs and boost housing diversity. In the Denver example, the same lot could accommodate 2 similarly sized houses on 3,000 square foot lots. Spreading the land costs across 2 homes could reduce the price of each by $175,000. This legislation is simple. Subject jurisdictions must, over the next 5 years, update regulations in order to not require a minimum lot size of over 2,000 square feet on lots whose only residential use, excluding ADUs and group homes, is single-family structures. This legislation very specifically targets single-family only use. If a subject jurisdiction wants to expand their use by right to middle housing like duplexes and triplexes, we would consider that amazing and also exempt that land from this bill. Expanding use by right to middle housing is another evidence-based way to create more accessible pathways to affordable home ownership. Folks, this is a simple bill. It is not a monumental boot on the neck of anyone, let alone a local jurisdiction. I would note that housing master plans are, under Colorado law, typically advisory unless the local government makes it mandatory. We urge an aye vote.
Representative Woog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just heard up here from the representative from Jefferson that this bill will start in certain jurisdictions. And I think for most people that follow along, that those are kind of scary words because that most certainly means that it won't end in these certain started jurisdictions. This bill got me thinking about a few years back when I was a town trustee in Erie, and at just a council meeting where we were listening to residents and developers about a development, a residential development. And in the room, it was full. There were no lobbyists in the room. There were no state representatives there. There were no state senators in the room. The room was full. It was full of moms and dads, small business owners, firefighters, neighbors, people who cared what my town was going to look like in 5 to 10 years, our town. And they weren't anti-growth. To the contrary, a lot of them welcomed growth. But they had very real common sense concerns. They worried about traffic congestion. They worried about water capacity with this development. They worried about how's this going to affect our classroom sizes where our children go to school. They were worried about emergency response times. So as a council, we listened. We made adjustments to the plan. We worked with the developer. It wasn't perfect, but the plan we put forward was the will of the people. So now imagine going to your local town council, city council meeting, and you're concerned about a development, and the mayor tells you your voices no longer matter. The decisions are now made by a state mandate. That is exactly what this bill does, and that is exactly why I'm a no.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to come up here again, members, just to reiterate the importance of how this bill is going to affect local governments and communities in the state of Colorado. This is another circumvent a bill that goes around planning commissions, goes around city councils, master plan for their communities. Again, I want to say the story that I said in committee. I sat in this committee for this bill. We in the city of Fort Lupton already do this. And then I was told, well, we don't, by the bill sponsor, we don't want the city of Fort Lupton to have all that weight on their back and not have other municipalities pull their weight. And my response was, we don't really care for that weight. We'll take it because that's what our community wanted. And we'll continue to do so as long as they tell us to do so. Now, I'm not on council anymore, but I was on there when I approved 2 of these small affordable housing developments going into Fort Lupton. I actually bought 2 homes in those small communities as rental properties. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because this is going to affect the city of Fort Lupton as well. Even though we're already doing this, we have our master plan to certain plots of land that are zoned R1, R2, or R3. Now, if a developer buys that plot of land zoned R1, which is larger plot sizes, right? And that developer decides, no, I want to build 2,000 square foot lot size homes on this zone plot R1 for larger custom homes. Now you just threw a big wrench into the master plan of the city of Fort Lupton, even though across the street there's already zoned R3 and R3 houses already being built. So the reason I'm saying this is because it's unintentionally affecting these communities that are already helping in this area. Now you're just pushing their master plan and their thoughts away. And one more step on making planning commissions null. Now I'm not saying this is going to do it completely. It's just one more step to making them null. Because they're not going to matter anymore because all these decisions have already been made here in this building. So, again, I want to say this is a very consequential bill that's going to affect local governments, local communities, and the voices of the people of those communities are no longer going to matter because they weren't here during this bill discussion. And I'm going to be a no vote.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This could have been a good bill. The policy at the heart of it can work very well potentially in some jurisdictions, but that has to be decided on a case-by-case basis with full knowledge of the environment, the geography, the infrastructure, the needs of the actual citizens in each of those jurisdictions. We cannot, we can apparently, but we should not be exerting state-level mandates on what has been traditionally and properly local land use decisions. As a planning commissioner in the past, as a county commissioner, I can tell you in my home county, We already have rules, and we're outside the starting point of this bill, but we already have things worked into our code that would allow multifamily homes, that would allow homes on small lots as this policy envisions, in areas that have been designated in economic development zone overlays. This is something that every jurisdiction is trying to address, and they're trying to address it and working to address it in a way that works for them. Had the amendment that I'd offered earlier passed, I probably could have supported this because it just transmits what could have been a good policy idea out to all jurisdictions that were affected and let them make a choice as to whether that works for them. As I said, good ideas can come from everywhere, but they all should be considered in the same way, whether they're being promulgated from this chamber or they're coming from the average citizen on the street that sees a problem that needs to be addressed. There is a process in place to take those ideas and work them forward into regulation and policy. And that's long-standing, it's absolutely recognized, and it ensures that we govern with the consent of the people, which is the heart of our governance model in this nation. So I would ask you to vote no on this, and just that, vote no.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. It's wafer thin. I think that's what I heard the sponsor say. It's wafer thin, wafer thin. You hardly even notice it. It's just a little bit more usurpation of citizens' rights, government control, local control for the imposition of Denver bureaucrats imposing their will on all of Colorado. A Denver solution for all of Colorado, a Denver-specific solution. It's wafer thin. You'll hardly even notice. Looking at just some statistics, Colorado's El Paso County, larger than Denver by population and by landmass, significantly larger landmass, which means that population is spread out over a larger area. It's interesting that that means lower crime rates. Cramming everybody into Colorado-style housing is not in the best interests of the citizens of Colorado. When we look at cost, we're looking at location, location, location. It costs money to live in a primary location. Now, one of the things that I see that this bill does is, to me, it looks like a sop to developers, because you can take a property and you can take the economics of supply and demand, and you can say, well, for a certain size property, let's say it's a 6,000 square foot property, and the supply of money, the demand for that property, maybe that will attract, let's say, a $50,000 price for that property, right? So now you have $6,000 for $50,000, and then a developer comes in and has bought up a lot of that property, and then you pay a legislator, because ultimately, taxes are not paid by the rich. The rich don't pay taxes; they pay politicians. But what you have is you take that lot then, and then you demand your investment to be that you can divide it into 3 properties. 2,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot. Now you could sell that 6,000 square foot lot for, say, $50,000, just as an example, and then maybe you can sell that 6,000 square foot lot 3 times for $30,000, so $90,000. So now you've taken that and you've increased it, and now you've taken that plot and you can sell each individual plot of land for $30,000, basically, essentially doubling your investment, and all you had to do was throw the emotional bait on the hook and say, this is for affordable housing. And all we have to do is we have to overwhelm, and all we have to do is usurp local control. And I don't know what it is about history being a warning from the future, but the past shows us also the Bolsheviks didn't like single-family housing before either. This is Now, Denver crime has gone down as that imported crime has been repatriated, but we still have an issue, and cramming people more into what I call the Calcutta-style housing doesn't help. And what you ultimately do in the case where you subdivide a lot from 6,000 square feet down to 2,000 square feet, and then you take the other legislation that came from last year of the sponsors that takes away the ability to put any sort of family definition to go from a family means people that are related to each other to family meaning anybody who happens to like each other and want to live in the same home, and then removing any arbitrary limits on occupancy, then you're taking this load, you're taking this grid that you have, the infrastructure grid, whether it's water, whether it's sewer, whether it's electricity. And electricity, of course, is especially problematic because you cannot expand that. And so when you have a certain amount of electricity that it's all brought in, and it's brought into an area for a certain size lot, say 6,000 square foot lots, and then you subdivide all of those lots, and you say now it's 3 times the density, and then you can quadruple the occupancy. Now you have an infrastructure that you're tapped into that will only work until it fails catastrophically. And eventually it will. But what you're doing, this is again, it's more opportunity for, it's a sop to developers. It allows them to divert money from infrastructure into politicians. So this is imposed centralized planning by unaccountable Denver bureaucrats and ideologues. This legislation inserts state-level decision makers, often driven by abstract ideological priorities. Denver is not growing at a rapid rate. I just looked, and it's like 40% occupancy, 40% vacancy on Laramie Street for businesses. Denver vacancy overall is 27 to 38. Uptown Denver, 45% occupancy for commercial buildings. Turn those into residential areas. Turn those into something. But what you're doing is instead the solution to the bad legislation that happens in this room is always more and worse legislation. And this is again the opportunity to impose the will of the General Assembly. If you want to really get to the cost, if you look at the cost, probably 33%, probably a third of the price when you're talking to builders is regulation. I've submitted a request for the asbestos because that is sapping $20 to $40 million per year out of the citizens of Colorado just for being able to do that. So $20 to $40 million. You could change that today. We could approve that bill, go back to federal standards, which are completely satisfactory, if not excessive themselves, but we would go back to federal standards, and we could save the citizens of Colorado $20 to $40 million per year. Do we do that to lower prices, to decrease regulation? No, we don't. Instead, CDPHE is ramping that up, and they're going to start testing roofing material. Guess what? It all has asbestos in it. Your drywall all has asbestos in it at legal levels, but levels that are going to cause it to ping hot, and they're going to cause it to be removed as hazmat, hazardous waste. And if you've done anything with hazardous waste, it's ridiculously expensive. But it's good intentions, and that's all that matters. This bill strips Colorado communities of the authority to set zoning standards themselves. It usurps. So it doesn't really matter that it's just wafer thin. It's a foot in the door. It's the nose under the tent. If this was the first one, but this is not the first one. Housing production already outpaces the slowing population growth. Colorado's housing shortfalls have decreased significantly from a peak of 140,000 units to 106, far exceeding the 34,000 units needed yearly to maintain a balance amid decelerating population growth. So what we have is a population that is growing slower. Colorado is not even maintaining a replacement rate. And so that population growth is on an arc, and what we're doing is we're encouraging this urban corridor, this dream of having everybody in Colorado crammed from Pueblo to Boulder. This neglects critical water considerations. There are areas in the state that require a property to be about 2.5 acres. Because you have to replenish the water supply. You have to allow that area. Now, what this would do is you would take those areas and you'd say, hey, those 2.5 acre lots, what is that, about 44,000, 88,000, 100,000 square feet roughly? And then you could subdivide them into 50 lots overnight. Now, this has been done. I've talked to communities where the planning was done for, say, 500 units. And then somebody in city council just went in and said, hey, you know what? That 500 units is now 5,000 units. And they don't have the water, they don't have the roads, they don't have the electrical supply. This encourages that kind of speculation. But for those areas in Colorado, if somebody's sitting on a 2.5 acre lot and they can now subdivide it instantaneously at the requirement of this body, then somebody can buy a single lot and then destroy that entire community. Because of the good intentions, because of the wefafin good intentions of this body. Overrides community preferences and neighborhood character. People move to areas where they have room to breathe, room to move. And apparently that is anathema to Denverites who think that everybody should be crammed in together, elbow to elbow. Not everybody wants to live like that. And instead of creating a Denver where people want to come into Denver and are clamoring for this space, the people that are making these policies have a rejection rate of 40%. Commercial buildings that were built with an intent, were built for the intent of renting them out, selling them, whatever, they are at a 40% vacancy rate. So we're taking, and that's just the nature of bureaucracy, is you centralize this planning, you centralize these bad ideas, and then these centralized bad ideas and bad execution have ramifications throughout the state. This overrides community preferences for neighborhood character, localizes local jurisdictions use larger lot requirements to preserve outdoor space, green space. But you want green space where nobody lives. You want everybody to live in this cramped housing with minimal footprints instead of having land that they care for spread out. I think it's all part of the rewilding plan, which is ultimately about de-peopling Colorado, which you're doing a great job. This is the hubris of state deciding the greater good. And again, history is replete with examples of where the greater good just means the decimation of hundreds of millions of people. Because centralized planning, the arrogance of centralized planning, the arrogance of pulling this, of centralized control over the state, ultimately results in horrendous consequences. Rather than empowering local innovation or incentives to address affordability, the bill ignores areas that this body could actually, like in regulation, in energy costs. Energy costs are a huge area. If you want to imposing things, idiotic things like mandated electrical power stations in a house, you can't do it with your current box. You can't do it with your current circuit breaker box, your electrical panel. You're going to need a $14,000, $15,000 upgrade. You're going to have to rewire your house. You're going to have to do all kinds of stuff. So instead of actually looking at where this body can actually make a difference inside of the consent of the governed, it looks outside the consent of the governed. It blames everybody, but the legislation blames everybody but itself for the problems that it has imposed. And instead of solving the problem, it creates more problems because it cannot admit that the ideology that it is promoting is a failure. So I recommend a no vote on this bill, even though it is merely a wafer thin government intervention and government control. I recommend a no vote because it is ultimately about usurping, overriding, and stomping on the will of the people, as is the nature of socialism.
Representative Sukla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've been in local government and I've been in state government. I ran for state government because I thought that the way that it worked was in state government, you made policies that enhanced what local government was doing. So I would like to compare the two. Land use codes. Local government does the land use codes. Why do they do the land use codes? Because they live there. Why do they have variances? Land use codes are something that if you lived in Kansas and everything looked the same, that would be a land use code that probably would work for everybody. However, where we live in the Mountain West is why there's something called variances that the county commissioners use is because we live in mountains, we live in desert, we have canyons, we have rivers, we have everything in between. Who knows best what we have, where that is, and that would be local government. Actually, to be honest, I was very naive what I thought that state government did. I thought state government just made very good highways coming into our counties. We worked on the county roads, and they funneled in the people, and we funneled them back out, and we took care of everything in between in the borders of that county. I said this last year when it comes to affordable housing. I went to large developers and I said, how can we make affordable housing cheaper? And they told me something that they use, very, very well-connected developers. It's lots of developments. And they said this. They said, you buy whiskey by the barrel, you sell it by the shot. You buy land by the acre, you sell it by the lot. They know what they're doing. Local government knows what they're doing. Again, a comparison from a state representative and a local government is we are the ones in local government that are supposed to be the voice of the people in that jurisdiction. And when we get to listen to them, we get to see them in the grocery store, we get to see them everywhere. We don't see what's going on the Western Slope in this building, I can tell you that. Infrastructure. Who knows best about infrastructure? Local government knows best. They know that we need to put a housing development over on the south of Cortez because that is closest to the treatment plant, and that is why we need to put it over there because we don't have the infrastructure to bring it from the north side of Cortez. They know that there's a substation 5 miles out of Cortez that can feed the east side of Cortez to put housing in because the infrastructure for the electricity is over there. How was me, if I was a state representative or a state representative for somebody else, how would they know that? They don't know that. The problem with this bill is we are taking the voice of the people away. The problem with this bill is it says that you can have, that this is going into effect with a municipality that has over 1,000 people. Well, I have 8 counties. There must be 30 municipalities in that, and there's going to be a lot of them that are going to trigger, this bill will trigger in their land use codes. Now what we are doing is we're taking away a variance. We're taking away a variance where the county commissioners realize that this is not a good area to put this in because of this, this, and this, and we are forcing them to approve to build the house on the 2,000 square feet lot. Where I come from, 2,000 square feet is, I don't even know how you build it. If you got a house here, you got a house here, I don't even know how you would get the equipment to build the house on that. We also have setbacks. We have a 50-foot setback where I live. If you take 50 foot off on a 2,000 square foot lot, What are you going to put in there? A doghouse, I guess from the bill yesterday, you can put a doghouse in there because nothing else is going to fit with those setbacks. So are we also taking away the setbacks from the county? What I see here is we are infringing on local government. Local government is our partner. We can make Colorado thrive by doing more. Let's just take the highway, the state highway into the counties, and then let's just leave them alone to do what they do best, because if they do it wrong, somebody's going to see them at the grocery store and they're going to get on them. They're not going to see anybody in this room in the grocery store, so we're just going to keep passing bills with no repercussions for it. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Believe it or not, I left something out of my notes and I wanted to bring that up, and that is about zoning in general, because the zoning violations have been, well, they've been coming fast and furious, and looking at the property bills, they're just going to keep coming. And I think it's important to note that zoning is a contract, and it's usually in here, it's presented as, hey, if we violate all of the zoning contracts, what we're doing is we're improving freedom. And maybe you can look at it that way, but what you're actually doing is you are doing at a statewide level, setting a precedent for the absolute violation of statewide contracts. Zoning is a contract between the individuals. It's a contract between when you buy into a property. What you have done is you have entered into a contract not only with your county, not only with your municipality, but your neighbors. You've entered in that contract voluntarily and said, in order for us to live in this proximation, I am going to constrain myself to a certain level of activity. Maybe I won't put every single concrete structure and every piece of decoration and every single wind chime on my lot. Maybe I won't keep cars in my front yard. I'm going to limit my expression, my freedom, in order to live proximately with my neighbors. And so you enter into this contract, and you also enter into this contract with the state. And now what this is doing, at the behest, no doubt, of developers, I suspect the whole YIMBY crowd, as they host continual meals, meet and greets, and I get all of the you have the legislators on their board, and they just say, we just want to help, and we just want to build affordable housing. That's all we want to do. We are givers. And then you look behind it. You look behind the curtain. You look past the smoke. You look past the mirrors, and there is profit motive. I'm not opposed to profit motive, but this is profit motive. This is taking property. This is taking the trust of the citizens around that purchase property based on zoning. Now, typically zoning, if you want to change the zoning, say from agricultural to R1, R2, R3, you're going to have to go through a process. You're going to have to go through a process. The community is going to be involved. And this is just the General Assembly feels that we are better suited because we live in Denver and we have all of these problems that we've created in Denver. We are going to export those immediately onto the citizens of Colorado because they are completely unaware, and we are going to set the precedent that any contract in Colorado can be violated by the will of the General Assembly. Now, I don't know if that's going to have any legal ramifications. It would take places suing. Now, what will happen is if this isn't complied with, the governor did that last year. He said, well, I'm not going to give you the money that you're due. And then when everybody objected and said, hey, that's just exactly what you're complaining about President Trump doing to Colorado because you violated all these federal rules, then he just braked all the money back and said, okay, well, I will now only give the money to the people that comply with this in the form of grants. It's the exact same thing. This bill is coercion. It's collusion between developers and the General Assembly, and it is coercion. It is usurpation of the local control because you feel like you have a problem here in Denver, and you do have a problem. It's a high vacancy rate. It's ideology over intelligence. And you need to stop imposing the ideology. Solve the problem that you have here. You have a 40% vacancy rate in commercial buildings someplace. It doesn't seem you have a housing problem. Don't create the precedent that the General Assembly, the General Assembly finds that it is imperative at this point to violate all zoning contracts with all citizens in Colorado, because that is the height of arrogance.
Minority Leader Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I just got up here to basically say I'm in agreement with virtually everything that my colleagues in the caucus have said already. This bill is just, it's antithetical to local control, which is something that people who live throughout the state very much rely on. And frankly, we pride our local control. If you go down to Monument, Colorado, you go to Palmer Lake, you'll be hard pressed to find a property lot that's less than 2,000 square foot, because that's how they've designed it. That's how they've planned it. That's why people move there, because they want those larger lots. And what we don't want is the state government telling us the lot sizes that we have to build, which is why I was very supportive of the amendment my colleague from Elbert ran earlier that says, if we want to suggest that you should do this because it promotes home building, then sure, do that. But to mandate it, and I noticed in the fiscal note before I came up here, it said this is pushing it out till 2031, so the fiscal note is $0 because there's plenty of time, is the assumption that is made to come in compliance with this. That doesn't mean it's costing our local governments $0. Just because you extend it out, that work still has to be done. So there is still an unfunded mandate put on our local areas, because the work still has to be done. Whether they're doing it in a 6-month period or they're doing it in a 5-month period, the work has to be done. There is a cost to it. And so again, let Monument, let Palmer Lake, let Falcon, Colorado, let Colorado Springs, let them design their areas the way they want to, and determine based on zoning and based on their master plans on how they're laying out their areas. Let them make that decision on how they want to build. It is not the state government's job to come in and say, you have to do this. Again, I don't think this gets said enough. We're saying that there's a housing shortage right now, even though, as my colleague from Colorado Springs brings up all the time, there's very high vacancy rates. But we constantly say that there's a housing shortage, but we're talking about this is a short-term problem, but we're passing laws and setting them on the books and they don't expire. So we're passing forever laws, long-term laws, to try to fix a short-term problem. And these laws, we know how laws are, they're not gonna be coming off the books once they go on. So again, I am not in favor of passing a long-term law, a long-term solution for what is essentially a short-term problem right now. And so again, this is antithetical to local control. There's a reason that when you go on the Secretary of State's website, you have Brighton and Thornton and El Paso County and Colorado Springs and Monument and a huge list. I encourage everybody who's listening to this to go on there and look at how many municipalities and counties are against this bill. It is antithetical to what we value in this state. I will be a very strong no, and I encourage everybody else to be no as well.
Representative Slaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To me, this bill is absolutely about, as everybody has spoken to, a local control thing. I think, maybe to speak for the sponsors and those who would support this, I think that they think that it's about affordable housing. Now, as a home builder, I think I would say that this would give me the opportunity to have a small lot and to build a very small structure on it, which would be, in total, less expensive than the average house that's being built right now. And many of those who would support this would say, well, that's the point. But I would definitely urge them to think about the fact that this will be a huge profit cow for me as a builder, because that price per square foot, if I build you a 200 square foot house, and I only charge you $220,000 for that 200 square foot house, $220,000, that's near impossible to find a house in Colorado these days for that little of an amount. But I guarantee I made a massive profit building that house, which that's fantastic for me as a builder. So are we doing this for people who need affordable housing? I don't really feel like this is actually getting after that problem.
And when we talk about the size of a dwelling that we're going to put on a less than 2,000 square foot house, it's going to be a very small structure. I mean, and again, to me, this goes back to, this is trying to get after affordability, but it's doing it the wrong way, and it's doing it at the cost of local control, and it's doing it at the detriment of those who need affordable housing the most. It's going to make it so that they are going to be paying the largest profit share to builders for the smallest dwellings that they can get built. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us, Representative DeGraff. Representative DeGraff.
Yeah, that's true. All right. I was asked to math this out a little bit for you, kind of based on my colleague's last statement. So a 2,000 square foot lot, let's just say that is going to be about 40 by 50, because that comes out to 2,000, slightly oblong, rectangular. If you put a reasonable setback on that of 10 feet, now a lot of buildings, a lot of problems. If you talk to the fire department and all that, some of these buildings, that the fire code is what requires a level of setback. So 10 feet. That means you'd have maybe 20 feet between you and your neighbors on any one side. Maybe that will stop fire from jumping from one house to another. Maybe. So if you take that setback 20 by 40 or 40 by 50 and you put a 10-foot setback for property easements, water, etc., you get down to a size that's 20 foot wide by 50 foot. And remember, we've already taken that property and we've subdivided it because we bought that whiskey by the barrel and sold it by the shot and made an incredible profit on usurping local control. But what you get down to is a lot size, a house size, a footprint size that would be about 600 square feet. And now you have so the property, now you have a property that has to be divided under 600 square feet. And as an example of that, an extreme example of that, it made me think about Harvard Yard has a tiny 5 foot by 5 foot, 25 foot square brick guardhouse that adjusted for inflation today would cost $180,000 to $200,000 or more. Now, it sounds like maybe they did that, not bid that properly, but that comes out to $2,000 per square foot. So when you cram housing into a very small footprint, what you end up doing, it's kind of like if you look at an economy car, and an economy car or a compact car versus an economy car versus a normal car. You're not saving any money, you're just cramming everything into a smaller space. The plumbing is going to be the same. You're going to have most of that cost is going to be sunk cost. You're going to have most of the same footing. You're going to have most of the same wall space. You're going to have most of the same everything. What you will just lack is volume in the house. So again, I just thought maybe you would like to understand the math that this is just pushing smaller and smaller houses, which ultimately go at higher and higher cost per square foot, because bills like this are purposed to benefit developers. They are purposed to benefit developers. I don't care who sells them to the politicians, they are purposed to benefit developers at the cost of the citizens of Colorado. But again, it's just wafer-thin usurpation of local control.
Representative Flannel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. HB 26-1114 is yet another example of this body removing local control that gives local governments and subject jurisdictions the right to implement the needs of their community. Time and time again, the needs of my district are superseded by the wants of this body. El Paso County continues to address housing issues as local government and does not need a heavy hand from the state. I am here to represent the people of House District 14, and part of that representation is acknowledging that local control is vital. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1114 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Sheba, will you please read the title of the House Bill 1099?
House Bill 1099 by Representatives Titone and Wynn, also Senators Colker and Marchman, concerning protecting the financial condition of common interest communities.
I would like to move this.
Maybe I'll do it.
Yeah, you do it.
Representative Titone.
Thank you. We should have rehearsed this first. I move House Bill 1099 and the committee report.
To the committee report.
All right, in the committee report, we made a few changes to the bill. These were changes that I didn't really want to do. They really kind of took a lot of the things away from the bill that actually do a lot of substantive policy. But what it did is it changes the requirement for developers to give money to the HOA. It takes away the ability for them to have a reserve study before the declarant gets control. And it only says that you have to have the HOA get the reserve study upon the time the declarant changes hands to from the declarant to the board. And there was a part, and I understand people want to say something about it, but I do have an amendment to the committee report that I want to run, because this was an important part of the bill that I wanted to run, and I held off because I wanted this conversation to happen. This is a really important conversation to happen. It comes to my personal experience, and I move Amendment L003. It asks for it to be displayed.
That is properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Titone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you have a new HOA, and this only applies to new HOAs, when you have a new HOA, you don't have any money in your reserves at all. And what happens is, and this happened to me, I bought a new condo in my HOA. It was a townhome community. We had 136 units, 8 buildings, and our liability insurance back in those days was $50,000. Now, I asked the question, can we pay our liability insurance in one lump sum? And they said, yes, if you do, you pay 10% less. And I said, well, we have enough money in our reserve account, so let's do that. Let's pay our liability insurance in one lump sum, and we'll save $5,000. So we paid our money back to the account. And I have a spreadsheet here. I'd like, if you want to look at it, I will explain it for you. But what this ends up doing for a community, when you have the ability to buy your liability insurance up front, you save a substantive amount of money. Now, liability insurance is not cheap, especially for multifamily units. The place that I was at, I talked to the president of the HOA there. The liability insurance is now $180,000 a year. So it went from $50,000 to $180,000 in about 10 years. That is a lot of money. If you paid that monthly, you would pay $18,000 more. So with this amendment, what it does is it asks the developer to put into an account for the HOA the amount of the liability insurance plus 10% of that. So now we're saying we're going to put the money in this account for the HOA for them to pay for their insurance. Hold on a minute, Rep. Titone. Are you trying to tell me that you're going to have the developers put money in an account for people? That's going to make the cost of housing more. Well, sure. I will explain. So in this example I have, and you look at this example I have. If the insurance is $100,000 roughly, there's 200 units, and they have to deposit $117,000 in an account. That equals $577 per unit. So everyone's going to have to pay $577 extra in the very beginning. Now, if that's in your mortgage, you're going to amortize that over 30 years. That's like pennies. But what you realize at the end of this, and that's what the spreadsheet you will see, in 20 years' time, according to this calculation that I have with inflation and interest in a bank account, just the insurance costs alone, this community will save $271,000. If you have extra money in your reserve account and you're making 3.25% interest rate, which is a little bit high, but you can adjust that. They'll make an accrued amount of interest over a 20-year period of $51,000 to a total of $323,000 gained to this community. If you do not pay your liability insurance up front, your insurance costs over the 20 years, considering a flat increase of inflation of 2.4% over a 20-year period, $271,000 of money you throw away. We did this in my community, and when we saved this money and we saved other money, when I got there with $50,000, when I left, we had $400,000 in the bank account. That's real money, and that money goes to pay for the things that are necessary for painting the buildings, fixing the roof, changing the sprinkler systems that may have to be overhauled, the fence. All of these common interest things that have to be fixed can be paid for by the money that you save by paying the money up front. But you'll never be able to do it if you don't have that initial seed money to get there. You're going to pay monthly and you're going to pay extra. This is for financial future of these communities. This is how we actually make housing more affordable. Because if you look at my calculation here, the amount of money gained back to the homeowner, each individual homeowner, happens after 7 years. And then after that, it's all extra money that they get return on investment. Real return on investment, real money for people who are in affordable housing situations that need to save money. This is how we do it. I've done it. It works. And all we're asking is for the developers to chip in a little bit of extra money in the beginning to make sure that these communities have a financial future, and I ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a great idea. It's a bad bill, but it's a great idea. It's a great idea because...
Representative DeGraff, we're on the amendment. If you could keep your conversation to the amendment.
Okay, okay, this amendment is a great idea.
Great.
The content, the idea behind the amendment is great. Putting it into legislation is a bad idea. Will it save? Well, I don't know. Is it going to save all of Coloradans? Because again, we're taking people and we're going to insert them into a place where the government, the General Assembly, which has done a bang-up job of saving money by blowing through $4 billion worth of surplus, an extra $4 billion worth of participation trophies, a couple $1 billion here, $1 billion there. And the General Assembly is giving financial advice to the citizens of Colorado. I think it's funny. Now, this is a good idea, but you can't legislate that. I mean, you can, and this building does all the time, but there is going to be a regulatory cost. If this was a good idea, again, if a good intention is a good idea, it's not going to need a gun. This is ultimately something that can result in a civil infraction. Then what do you do? Just piling up the cuts. If you want to, and what are we talking about? $577 is the cost if you get ahead of that for the year, because you divide that among the units. So you should be able to take that good idea and go, hey, look, everybody, if everybody chips in $577 for the year, we will have an additional $10,000 at the end of the year by which to get ahead of this debt. And if you divide that out, less than $50 a month, that everybody should say, yeah, we could do that. And that would be a good idea. But when you put it in the form of legislation and then you start and you just normalize once again that every good idea that you have becomes part of the tax code of our general Colorado revised statutes. It all goes in there. Those costs add up. everything, this is going to have a regulatory cost. I haven't seen the fiscal note. I've seen so many fiscal notes just miraculously become zero for some reason. And then, of course, we'll just pass the budget and then next year say, oh, turns out that the fiscal note was not accurate and we actually need more money to make this happen. It is just not the appropriate role of government. Government is inserting itself into private contracts. The last bill, the government was voiding private contracts. This one, it's inserting itself into private contracts. I would at some point start to think that businesses might be saying, hey, Colorado is not a good place to do business because we have no idea what the state is going to do, and maybe that's why you have a 40% vacancy rate in parts of Denver.
Representative DeGraff, are we still talking about L3?
Absolutely. Have you not been listening?
I have been. I'm
Okay.
having trouble following the connection to L3.
The connection to L3 is that trying to legislate the good intentions like this ends up in bad places instead of where we're talking about $577,000 is the road to affordable housing when we're ignoring the $200,000 in regulatory costs, energy costs, and everything else that is being imposed by this body. So these housing things that we're pretending, the pretense that we're caring about housing, when we're throwing sops to developers and we're inserting and voiding private contracts is, I mean, if you want to make affordable housing, let's get to the actual root of the problem, which is this room. Instead of trying to trim a little bit around the edges, which is what this does by creating all sorts of bigger problems. So I recommend a no on the amendment. I recommend a no on the bill.
Is there any further discussion on L3? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of L3 to the committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. L3 is adopted. Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the committee report to House Bill 1099. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Nguyen.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize that this bill is bringing protections for consumers. This is an affordability bill. This is a bill that's going to make sure that folks are not going to have to see payments that are not available to them. So this is a transparent bill as well. So vote yes.
Representative Titone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HOAs need reserve studies to understand their long-term expenses. This is a tool that is a necessary tool. All the experts who work in this industry will tell you that it is a necessary thing to have. We're asking the reserve studies to be provided to the communities so they have that information ahead of time to make smart decisions, reducing the housing long-term, making sure that they can sell their units later. This is a really good affordable housing bill for all of the new HOAs we're going to be building, and I ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1099. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The bill passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1103.
House Bill 1103 by Representatives Garcia and Goldstein, also Senator Cutter, concerning amending specific legal processes for certain vulnerable populations.
Representative Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. I move HB 26-1103 and the committee report.
To the committee report, Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. In the committee, we adopted 4 amendments that clarified some language, jurisdictional issues, and also struck a very important piece that made this bill constitutional, which was rebuttable presumption for testifying remotely. And with that,
I move amendment.
Representative Goldstein.
I move amendment L1005 to the Judiciary Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is displayed to the amendment. Representative Goldstein.
Thank you. On page 2, strike lines 13 through 16 and substitute if the alleged offense occurs in a jurisdiction other than the jurisdiction in which it was reported, the Child Advocacy Center in the appropriate jurisdiction as determined by the receiving law enforcement entity or peace officer. In all cases, a law enforcement entity or peace officer shall notify a child advocacy center within the state. On page 1 of the report, line 18, strike reporting the. And then on page 1 of the report, line 19, strike allegation to the Child Advocacy Center and substitute notifying the Child Advocacy Center of the allegation. On page 2, strike lines 6 through 9 and substitute. And then page 3, strike lines 12 through 20 and substitute. The trial court shall make findings of the record regarding the witness's ability to testify in the courtroom and in the presence of the defendant and.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in essence, what this amendment is doing, it's allowing the local law enforcement to determine the jurisdiction if the alleged crime happens outside of the jurisdiction of the Child Advocacy Center. And then at the end, we are taking out language that was brought to us by the advocates. So that way, the factor in determination is limited to the results in which a witness suffering serious emotional distress or trauma. And we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L5? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of L5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The amendment passes. Representative Goldstein.
I move amendment L006 to House Bill 1103 and ask that it be displayed properly.
Is your amendment to the committee report or to the bill?
No, it's not. No.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the
Withdraw my
committee?
amendment.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. I move L006 to House Bill 1103 and ask that it be properly displayed. Okay.
That is properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative Goldstein.
I want to amend the printed bill, page 2, line 4, strike mandatory and substitute required. Page 2, line 10, before report, insert notify and. Page 2, line 21, strike request and substitute coordinate. And after interview, insert pursuant to the requirements set forth in the sections 19-3-3008.5.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What this amendment is doing is essentially making sure that we are not creating more confusion with the word mandatory as it relates to mandatory reporting, and we're just stating that it still is required reporting. The other thing is that we are also indicating that reporting and notifying are essential for communication within law enforcement and the CACs. And then we wanted to emphasize that this is a coordinated relationship. It's not just a one group tells the other, which is why we are adding the coordinate section, the coordinate language in the last part of this amendment, and we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of L6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. L6 passes. To the bill.
All right, I would like to.
Representative Goldstein.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
This bill is an effort to provide children who are victims of sexual assault as trauma-informed process when accusing their perpetrator, the trauma of being abused, and then the re-traumatization of having to retell the abuse, and then the trauma of having to sit in person while your perpetrator is only feet away from you has devastating impacts on a victim. We are focusing our efforts on two particular engagements when a child's case is being investigated and prosecuted. Childs who are victims of sexual assault face numerous psychiatric disorders, with 37% having generalized anxiety and 90% having PTSD. Children who are victims of sexual assault exhibit high levels of stress and anxiety before court proceedings, and those who testify were 20 times more likely to exhibit a significant decrease in their anxiety scores. Child advocacy centers were found to, on the average, reduce the stress and trauma that a child might face during the investigation process, and child sexual assault cases are more likely to move forward if the victim showed greater willingness to proceed with the court process and investigation. And in child sexual assault trials, one of the greatest predictors of successful prosecution is an effective testimony from the child victim. The risk of further traumatization through the investigative process can be reduced through a quick access to child advocacy centers, as well as increasing access to remote testimony.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Goldstein. It is an honor to bring this bill forward with you and for this to be your inauguration to the well and presenting a bill. One thing that we know is that law enforcement and CACs already have collaborative partnerships with many jurisdictions in Colorado, however, not all of them. And it's also not mandated that law enforcement coordinate with child advocacy centers. And it's important to recognize that child advocacy centers are in fact trauma informed, and that is essential in making sure that the process when a child is sexually assaulted and abused, that they have a trauma-informed approach in this. So the two particular things that this bill is bringing is it proposes to mandate law enforcement entities and peace officers to report alleged child sexual assault to the proper child advocacy center within the judicial district, or as you saw in the amendments, to one that the law enforcement entity determines. This also increases the age cap to under 18 years old for witness access to testify remotely on the basis of severe emotional distress or trauma, and requires that a judge state to the witness their decision of why they decided to allow the remote testimony or to deny remote testimony. And we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Goldstein.
It is an honor to serve with you, Rep. Garcia, and you bringing me along on my first bill in the well.
Any further discussion? Rep. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this forward. I wish it was a bipartisan bill. I've been working a very long time to protect children in Colorado. The child advocacy centers, we just heard a great bill from the representative from Mesa talking about these very important centers. There's 19 of these centers in Colorado. They provide wraparound services for children experiencing assault and violent crimes against them. It's a very important bill. I also like the amendment where it allows witnesses to be in front of it allows victims to go in front of the offenders if they want to, but disallows it if they don't. Speaking as someone who is in the middle of a court case right now, being with my offender in the same room is very difficult. So I appreciate you guys bringing this on a case by case. I just would like to say that I would love for us to come together in a bipartisan way to continue to protect the children in our state. We are the 4th highest in rape. We are now the 7th highest in trafficking. We continue to kick the can down the road. We don't need bills like this if we would actually put these people in jail. So please continue to work while we are here to protect the vulnerable children of Colorado. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1103. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The bill passes. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 1146.
House Bill 1146 by Representatives Phillips and Hamrick, also Senators Kolker and Kipp, concerning allowing approved facility schools to affiliate with the Public Employees Retirement Association.
I'm doing the wrong thing. Okay, then I'm going to go first.
Representative Phillips.
Oh, maybe me reading it.
Representative Hamrick.
Members, I move House Bill 261146.
To the bill.
House Bill 261146 is a straightforward bill with a simple intent. It allows approved facility schools to choose to join PARA, Colorado's public retirement system, by explicitly including them as an eligible employer in the PARA statute. This bill provides facility schools the choice to apply to join PARA while maintaining PARA's authority for final approval. Facility schools allow students who may not be successful in a regular classroom the opportunity through one-on-one and small classrooms to progress through the educational system at a pace designed for their individual success. Facility schools serves some of Colorado's most vulnerable students, including those students in residential treatment centers, psychiatric facilities, and other therapeutic settings, where mental health and behavioral needs intersect with education. Educators in these settings need specialized skills and long-term stability to support students' learning and healing. Currently, facility schools are unable to apply to join PARA because they are not defined as an eligible employer in statute. For those facility schools which receive state and local funds who want to ensure their employees have access to retirement benefits on par with those of public school employees, this bill allows a facility school to apply to join PARA. Facility schools receive funding from contracts with school districts and the State Department of Education. Since these schools are delivering publicly funded educational services on behalf of districts, allowing them to opt into PARA is consistent with the purpose of a public retirement system. But today, facility schools cannot opt in to PARA, which makes it hard for them to compete with school districts and other public employers when recruiting and retaining high-quality staff. House Bill 261146 adds approved facility school into the PARA statute, adds approved facility schools to the list of public entities that can apply to affiliate with PARA, clarifies that an approved facility school that affiliates must be placed in PARA's local government division, which is where many smaller public entities are structured, and does not change the existing affiliation structure. The school applies, and the affiliation is subject to PARA board approval, and then the normal duties and responsibilities begin upon affiliation. Access to PARA would create parity with other public school employers on retirement benefits, strengthen recruitment with a benefit many educators expect and value, and improve retention by helping staff build long-term financial security. Members, this is an option to affiliate bill. Facility schools are not forced into PARA, but they finally have the ability to opt in with PARA oversight. I respectfully ask for a yes vote on House Bill 261146.
Representative Phillips.
Thank you. This bill allows teachers at the Colorado Department of Education approved facility schools to be able to opt into public employees retirement program. This benefit is a tool to recruit and retain teachers in a shortage field for children with disabilities. It allows teachers in facility schools, and we have about 30 of those serving students with disabilities, to have the same PERA benefit as teachers in other schools. Good bill, vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1146. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Nice.
Bill passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1180.
House Bill 1180 by Representatives Marshall and Gonzalez, also Senator Henriksen, concerning the continuation of the Business Intelligence Center Advisory Board and in connection therewith, implementing the recommendation of the Department of Regulatory Agencies 2025 Sunset Report by repealing the advisory board.
Action only. Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1180.
To the bill. Representative Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, colleagues, let's get out of here real quick. This is actually getting rid of a bureaucracy. We have a sunset bill. We're actually eliminating something that is no longer useful to the government, so we hope everyone will vote for it. Thanks.
Representative Gonzalez.
To my colleagues on my side of the aisle, I just want to say this is a sunset bill, so it's a good bill. We get a reduced bureaucracy, as my colleague said. So, good bill, vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1180. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. House Bill 1180 passes. Madam Majority Leader. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no, you heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Shebo, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs if report is under consideration the following attached bills being the second reading of and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1017 is amended, 1099 is amended, 1103 is amended, 1114 is amended, 1146 and 1180 passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Mabry. Members, you've heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Shebo, please read the Richardson amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Richardson moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Richardson amendment, L5 to House Bill 1114, to show that said amendment passed, that House Bill 1114 is amended passed.
And Rep. Richardson, before you begin, 1 second. Members, take your seats, please. We need to vote. Rep. Richardson, please proceed.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. I move the Richardson Amendment for consideration by the Committee of the Whole.
That is a proper motion. We'll get it displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you. I know 1114 was a while back, an hour or so, maybe. When I first brought this amendment on a voice vote, it did fail, but the room was loud. There might have been some that missed the significance of the amendment. And as a big believer in second chances, I offer this body a second chance today. It's a very simple amendment, and I do recognize that it dramatically changes the bill. I absolutely do. Doesn't change the underlying idea. It changes the bill from a mandate that truly makes a mockery of the public hearing process that is required when changes are made to local land use code. Mandating the outcome of a public hearing means that public input is meaningless. It's predetermining the result of a vote, and that's just wrong. It forces local governments to be a rubber stamp of this body. If the sponsors feel this is a great idea, and I do think it has merit in some jurisdictions, one that would actually help address issues in the areas targeted for now, and that was what we heard from the sponsor, that they were targeted for now, this was just the start, then they should support this amendment that allows full consideration of this great idea that they have. If they oppose, they're placing the will of this body above the people we serve and the local governments that were elected to serve them. It puts the will of this body ahead of those that are most impacted. It's been said that the government closest to the people is best. Those are our local governments. It's also been said that that government is best that governs least, and we have an opportunity to govern least today, to offer a good idea for consideration by that local government that's closest to the people. So if we adopt this amendment, we are then offering this bill that simply requires that the policy idea be considered. We become one of the many inputs to local governments for improvements to their land use code. We then let the people of those jurisdictions weigh in public hearing for their voices to be considered. We let the local public hearing process play out in an unbiased way, one that's not predetermined by this body. Colorado law, tradition, and constitutional principles require meaningful public participation in land use decisions. I'd humbly submit here today that respect for the Colorado law, tradition, and constitutional principles requires a yes vote on this amendment. Let's let a good idea work through the entire process. Let the people weigh in on things that impact their local homes, their local communities. I'm not saying that the policies that was brought forward is a bad idea, but it needs to be run through the entire process before adoption. And I would ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Further discussion. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the opportunity that the body has to readdress this. This is not a small decision. This is a monumental overreach, overriding local control with a lot of ramifications. It might be a small sentence, it might be one of the relatively small bills, but don't let it fool you about the impact. It's voiding really millions of contracts and telling the world that Colorado is not a safe partner with whom to enter business. So this is a small amendment. It truly is wafer thin. And what it does is it returns the bill to consent instead of coercion. So let's return this bill. Let's try to think in terms of our constitutional alignment, of our constitutional oath, to not violate that Constitution, and return to the consent of the governed instead of the coercion of the governing. This bill is the coercion of the governing. It's the dictate of dictators, and we need to adopt this amendment to return this to the just powers of the government.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and thank you to my colleague. I am up here once again to respectfully ask for a no vote on this amendment, as it would undermine greatly the impact of this legislation and make the entire bill optional. So I'd ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Richardson Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebo, please open the machine. Members, please proceed to vote. Representative English is excused. With 20 aye, 42 no, and 3 excused, the amendment is lost. Mr. Shebo, please read the title of the Wynn and Titone Amendment.
Representatives Wynn and Titone move to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to oversee action taken by the committee in not adopting, taken by the committee in adopting the following Titone Amendment L3 to House Bill 1009 to show that said amendment lost and that House Bill 1099 as amended passed.
Representative Wynn.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. I move the Wynn Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask to be displayed.
That's a proper motion. One moment.
This amendment strikes out the previous amendment that was added to 1099, and this removes the clause which is discussing the fully reserved funds.
Representative Titone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Well, I guess nobody was paying attention to when I was actually talking about this amendment and what it does and how it actually saves people money. So in lieu of that, we're taking the amendment off, and maybe we'll get the Senate to cover it, because this is a really important amendment. It does actually take away what I did before, so it goes back to the way it was. But the concept still is that people do need the money to pay for their insurance to make their housing affordable. But I asked for a yes vote on this amendment because I don't want to disturb what we actually already did in the bill. So we're going back to the bill that came out of the committee. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Wynn and Titone Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebo, please open the machine. Members, please proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 39 aye, 23 no, and 3 excused, the amendment is adopted. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine. Members, please proceed to vote. Representatives Froelich and Sukla. Please close the machine. With 41 aye, 21 no, and 3 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Any other announcements and introductions? Seeing none. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Wednesday, February 25th, 2026.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow, February 25th. Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess until later today.